We're talking with Dr. Houston Smith, author of the standard textbook, The World's Great Religions. You have led us through growing up in rural China, and suddenly you landed back in Missouri. You made an intellectual, mystical decision in some way, or influenced by that, and then you spent your life in academia. From central Missouri, where did you go?
I went to the University of Chicago for my graduate work and did my graduate work in contemporary philosophy. But then it was only after I got sprung from had my degree in hand that I realized that in my teaching I loved teaching about these world's great religions, and in comparison, modern philosophy seemed pretty tame and almost like a cage because it had been infected by the scientific outlook. And when I say infected, I don't mean to say anything disrespectful towards science. I had prostate cancer 5 years ago, and without radiation, we wouldn't be here talking. So I'm not going to badmouth science as such. But science can deal, to put it simply, only with facts. It cannot deal with values. And human life is a mix of facts and values. And so what I believe, and what has been the exhilaration of my life, is trying to help my students see that we need a binocular vision to look at life in the world with the factual information that science gives us, but not do it through one eye only, but then bring in the world of values. And there, the world's great religious traditions are what I have come to call the wisdom tradition of the human race. Because when we come to values, they are like the data banks. And that's why I love my career, spending my career more in soaking myself in the great enduring perspectives of these religions rather than adding coals to Newcastle and dwelling on modern philosophy and science.
Well, and academia certainly is not the most hospitable to someone who has a religious interest, is it?
Hugh, that is a fair statement.
Okay. Let's take you from the University of Chicago. Well, where to next?
Oh, a couple of years in Colorado, first teaching, but then the first long stint was at Washington University in St. Louis, 11 years, and that's where I phased into PBS, because when it went on the air, why, I was asked to teach a course on world religion, and this was in the first year of PBS. It was then called by a different name, but the same animal, and now as my career comes full circle, why Bill Moyers comes forward and says, don't you do a course on world, or a series, PBS special, 5 programs on world religion. So it's been a very happy homecoming.
And we're taking some photographs from your illustrated version with that show with Mr. Moyers, and let's put one up on Buddhism that taken from the illustrated world religion. What are we seeing?
This is Maitreya Buddha, a wooden image in a little nunnery near Kyoto, and it is an image of the coming Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, which would be the counterpart to the second coming of Christ. At the end of history, the Buddha will return, and this is an artist's depiction of what the Buddha will look like.
Let's go to the next one, Taoism, because it is rooted where you grew up.
That is like the dancing Shiva. This image of the yin-yang in the center there now virtually belongs to the world. And Chinese say that one can learn more from gazing at that image than from reading 1,000 books. What it does is to take the opposites of life, good and evil, light and dark, sickness, health, and show that there is no razor-sharp division, but note the way in which each sort of meanders into the other's domain and takes up its citadel in the very heart of its opposite. Very quickly, let me tell you a story that I think goes to the heart of this. It's of a farmer, and his horse ran away. The neighbor comes hopping over to commiserate. He says, who knows what's good or bad? And true, the next day the horse came back with a drove of wild horses that it had befriended. So the neighbor comes over to congratulate, and the man says again, who knows what's good or bad? And true, because his young teenage son got horsing around on those horses, fell off and broke his leg. The neighbor comes over to commiserate. The man says, who knows what's good and bad? And sure enough, the next day the soldiers came through commandeering for the army, and his son didn't have to go because of his broken leg. And as they say this is the symbol of life. We take it as though these are opposite, but the problem is to mold them together into a single coherent whole.
Our problem is we have a break. We'll be right back. We're back. We're talking with Dr. Huston Smith, author of The World's Great Religions. This book has been condensed, reduced by 50% in text, and some pictures added to it. The World's Great Religions on your screen now. And this is a companion to the show you did with Mr. Moyers?
That's correct, yes.
And so we've been looking at some stills taken. How many photographs about in this, or images in this book, do you think?
Truth to tell, I haven't counted, but on every page there would be an average of one. So what, 270 pages?
Okay, so it's talking about the world's great religions and then illustrations of that. The
world's great religious art folded into the pages.
Great. Let's go back. We were talking about Taoism, and I was interested, since you grew up, and maybe we can get that image back up on the screen of the yin-yang. Since you grew up in China, do you think Chinese? Is your logic, do you still speak Cantonese?
I speak my hillbilly dialect with the vocabulary, with the fluent native speaker's accent of a 12-year-old, because when I was 13, I went to Shanghai to an American boarding school, and my vocabulary did not advance. Actually, I've studied a little bit, so I can get around in Chinese all right, but most Chinese go into hysterics because it's like I'm speaking with a deep Appalachian hillbilly Chinese accent.
That intersection of East and West, of yin and yang, talk about that black and white lines. How does that...
Well, let me give you another image. My father came from a farm and thought we should have some bees. But when he went to rob those bees, it would be like a sideshow. He would have one of these straw hats with a brim and mosquito netting all over him. He always got stung. And finally, our cook said, well, you know, there's a bee professional in the town. Why don't you have him come in? And so he did. He came in long robes, a scholar's hat. There was a man of dignity, and when he went to the bees, he rolled back his long sleeves and just moved in with his hands. And it was like a dance, the way he worked with those bees. They were all over him, and he came out, never a sting, and he got his honey. And that image has remained with me as the yin-yang and the Taoism, because here are antagonists. You've got a thief coming at that, but look at the way they work together, and look how it comes out with no sting. It's a parable for life, Hugh. I advise you to, in your next confrontation, to go at it that way.
Houston Smith, thank you. We'll be back, and you're going to stay with us and do another conversation. Thanks for being with us on Mosaic. I'm Hugh Burroughs.